Once arrived as a captive in Numenor, the Dark Lord Sauron set to work enacting his plan to destroy the island kingdom by ingratiating himself with the royal court and population, using his vast knowledge and skills to offer aid whenever possible. Winning their trust, he then sought to further their corruption by forming the cult of Melkor and built a temple where they performed dark rituals like human sacrifices. Since many Numenorians, including the king, already hated the Valar and no longer worshipped Eru, they were eager to hear the teachings of Sauron, who was an immortal Maya older than the world itself, and therefore knew much about these beings. Taking advantage of their ignorance, Sauron taught that the supposed god of this world, Eru, did not actually exist and was merely invented by the Valar as a means to keep humanity subjugated. Yet Melkor, the giver of freedom, wanted to liberate them from this oppression, and thus it was through his worship that men might grow even more powerful than the Valar. Becoming a trusted advisor to the king, Sauron called for Nimloth to be destroyed, and so in response, Isildur of the Faithful, grandson to the Lord of Andúni, stole a fruit from the White Tree in order to safeguard its legacy. Unfortunately, this action was seen as a sign by the king, who ordered Nimloth burned. Growing more prideful by the day, Ar-Pharazon dismissed the Lord of Andúni from his council, a close friend since childhood, so beloved that despite being one of the faithful, he was allowed to serve in the royal court for many years. Yet while Amandil was no longer welcome in the capital, he was still highly respected, and so no harm befell him or his family. Using the secret knowledge provided by Sauron, Numenorians devised new engines and built greater ships, increasing their wealth through their Middle-earth colonies, which brazenly plundered and enslaved neighboring powers. Yet this pursuit of material wealth and military might intensified their corruption and fear of death, furthering the loss of their divine blessings, leaving many to suffer madness, illness, and shorter lifespans. As a result, Numenorians grew increasingly greedy, jealous, angry, and violent, quarreling and killing each other over minor provocations. Seeking to hasten this division and civil strife, the Dark Lord traveled throughout the island, stirring up rebellions against the elite, which in turn caused the nobility to exact cruel revenge upon the people. For years, Ar-Pharazon ruled as the greatest tyrant since Morgoth in the First Age, though in truth, it was Sauron who held the reins of power. Despite having everything a man could want, the king's fear of death worsened as he grew older, allowing Sauron to prey on this vulnerability and enact the final part of his plan. Disguising his intentions by claiming he would reveal a secret truth, Sauron claimed the Valar lied about the nature of their immortality, and that if a being as mighty as Ar-Pharazon were to conquer the Undying Lands, he too would gain eternal life and mastery over the world. Convincing the king, Ar-Pharazon spent 9 years preparing his great armament for the invasion of Valinor, and so in response, the Valar sent signs to warn him of his folly, including earthquakes, darkened skies, violent winds, torrential rains, hailstorms, and clouds in the shape of eagles, with lightning beneath their wings. Yet Ar-Pharazon instead took these warnings as an attack, claiming, "The lords of the West have plotted against us. They strike first, the next blow shall be ours." When at last the great armament was complete, a final warning fell upon them when the eagles of Manwë came forth, arrayed as if for battle, with a terrible red sky behind them, shining so bright the Numenorians glowed as if lit with a flame of great anger. But the king ignored the sign, hardened his heart, boarded his ship, and sailed for war. The faithful, however, understood the truth behind these signs, and knew the king would bring doom upon them all. Therefore, the Lord of Andúni made a desperate plan to save his people by leaving his son Elendil in command of the faithful while he sailed in secret to the Undying Lands before the departure of the Great Armament, in hopes of replicating the success of his ancestor Eärendil, who convinced the Valar to save Middle-earth from Morgoth in the First Age. Departing the island on a small ship with his 3 most loyal servants, the Lord of Andúni made his way into the west and was never heard from again. Following his father's instructions, Elendil prepared a fleet of ships at the port Romena and readied the faithful to depart if necessary, taking with them as many island treasures as possible. When the king called for the faithful to bring their warriors forth and join the great armament, Elendil refused and so ordered his people to board their ships, sailing eastward to relative safety. In the year 3319 of the Second Age, Ar-Pharazon arrived in the Undying Lands and marched into Valinor, where he declared himself ruler of the continent. In response to this invasion, Manwë, king of the Valar, called upon the creator Eru, who unleashed his terrible power, swallowing the ships of the Great Armament beneath the waves, while Ar-Pharazon and his warriors were buried under falling hills, trapped within the Forgotten Caves until the final battle at the end of the world. The island of Numenor, meanwhile, sank into the sea, while the continent of Aman physically detached itself from their previously flat world, now made round, populated with new lands and seas. Given these changes, the mortal races could no longer travel to the Undying Lands, though a hidden, straight road remained, accessible only to the elves. This great cataclysm led to the deaths of everyone on Numenor, including their queen, the faithful Mediel, who died trying to escape the waves by climbing Meneltarma. Though Sauron was worried when he felt the fury of Eru, his fear turned to laughter when realizing the ruin he brought upon his enemies. When his temple collapsed and body died, Sauron's Maya spirit, still in possession of the One Ring, made its way to Mordor. Having lost the ability to take fair form, Sauron made himself a body to inspire fear and started rebuilding his armies to conquer Middle-earth. Yet the peoples of the West continued to oppose him, not only the elves, but also the Dúnedain of Elendil, the faithful of Numenor, who survived the doom. Though it cannot be certain why the faithful aboard their ships were spared, some believe Amandil's voyage to the Undying Lands had some measure of success, causing the Valar to protect his people and bring them unharmed to the shores of Middle-earth. With their ships split into two groups, Elendil and his followers sailed into the elven kingdom of Lindon, while his sons Isildur and Anarion arrived at the mouth of the river Anduin. In the north, these surviving Dúnedain established the kingdom of Arnor, populating settlements like Anúminas, Fornost, Cardolan, and Rhudaur, while in the south, they formed the kingdom of Gondor, with the brother kings ruling from the capital of Osgiliath. Though the Scepter of Kings was lost, the faithful saved the Scepter of Andúnie, held by the kings of Arnor, as well as many other Númenórean treasures, like the Seven Palantiri and the White Tree of Gondor, grown from the stolen seedling of Nimloth, which was planted in the city of Minas Ithil. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Ishmam Ahmed of Shamiriana, Torque Frostbite, Ranyas Senestella, Keeper of Ancient Lore, and Feanor Nathan. If you'd like to help the channel, you can sign up for membership through the YouTube Join button, buy merchandise from the store page, or else go to patreon.com/CivilizationEx, where you can get early access to videos, vote on future content, and access the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.